Pay attention now. Most people think this morning was ordinary, but heaven does not wake people up by accident. The fact that your eyes open today means something already moved in the unseen before your feet touched the floor. While you were sleeping, doors were shifting, chains were breaking, battles were turning. And what God prepared for you this morning, you have not fully seen yet. There are mornings that feel normal, and then there are mornings that carry an announcement from heaven. Most people never learn the difference. They wake up, they rush, they complain. They carry yesterday into today like a prisoner dragging chains. But there are certain mornings when God allows your eyes to open because your season is changing. This is one of those mornings. You thought you woke yourself up. Breath is not controlled by human hands. There were people with plans who never opened their eyes today. People with money, people with power, people who thought they had more time. Your name was called again by mercy. That means heaven is not finished with you. And this is where many misunderstand the ways of God. Because God does not always announce miracles with noise. Sometimes he hides them inside ordinary moments. A new door rarely looks like a new door in the beginning. Sometimes it looks like a delay. Sometimes it looks like confusion. Sometimes it looks like being pushed away from something you begged to keep. But what if the closed door was protection? What if the disappointment was divine interruption? What if God was removing you from places your future could not survive? You see, people celebrate open doors, but they do not understand the pain required to prepare someone to walk through them. Because if your mind remains small, you will sabotage the very blessing you prayed for. That is why some prayers take time. God is not only preparing the blessing, he is preparing the person who will carry it. And many people listening to this have been asking one question. Why is it taking so long? Because some doors are too large for the version of you that existed before this season. You wanted quick answers. God wanted transformation. You wanted escape. God wanted maturity. You wanted immediate relief. God wanted permanent change. And now something is shifting. Can you feel it? There are moments when heaven begins moving before earth sees evidence. A farmer understands this mystery. The seed disappears before the harvest appears. And that is the problem with impatient people. They think invisible means inactive. God does his deepest work where human eyes cannot see. While you were crying, he was arranging. While you were doubting, he was building. While you were losing sleep, he was opening roads you did not know existed. There are people about to call you unexpectedly. There are opportunities already moving toward your life. There are answers traveling through places you cannot yet imagine. But the greatest miracle may not even be external. The greatest miracle may be what God is doing inside you. Because the old version of you would have collapsed under the weight of the next blessing. The old version of you needed approval from everybody, needed validation, needed constant reassurance. But pain changed you. Disappointment educated you. Silence strengthened you. And the battles you thought were destroying you were actually introducing you to a stronger identity. You are not waking up as the same person anymore. Version is fading. This is why some people suddenly stopped understanding you. Your spirit outgrew environments your flesh once loved. You cannot ask God for elevation while demanding comfort at the same time. Growth breaks familiar patterns. And many people resist new doors because they are emotionally attached to old prisons. Read that again in your spirit. Some people are praying for freedom while fighting to stay comfortable. But every major move of God begins with disruption. Before the sea opened, there was pressure. Before resurrection, there was darkness. Before promotion, there was isolation. And what you called isolation was sometimes divine separation. Because not everyone assigned to your past is permitted into your future. Some people were only temporary. Temporary pain, temporary confusion, temporary betrayal. But God never intended for temporary seasons to become permanent identities. You are not your worst moment. You are not your delay. You are not the rejection that broke your confidence. And this is where the enemy attacks most people. Not through destruction, through agreement. If he can make you agree with fear, you will close doors God already opened. If he can make you agree with hopelessness, you will sit outside miracles meant for your life. That is why your mind matters. Because a closed mind can live inside an open heaven and still miss everything. Listen carefully. There are blessings people pray for, then there are blessings people are prepared to recognize. Those are not the same thing. Some people miss miracles because they arrive in unfamiliar forms. You prayed for change. But when change arrived, it made you uncomfortable. You prayed for elevation, but elevation demanded discipline. You prayed for a new season, but new seasons require new thinking. And now God is confronting the deepest battle inside you, not the battle around you, the battle within you, the voice that says, nothing will change. This is how my life will always be. I have missed too much time. I am too damaged now. That voice is lying to you. Your history is not your prophecy. One moment of divine favor can change years of struggle. One open door can erase seasons of delay. One instruction from God can redirect your entire future. People think miracles are always dramatic. Sometimes a miracle is simply God restoring your ability to believe again. Because when a person loses hope, they stop seeing possibility. And when possibility dies, vision disappears. That is why many people survive physically while dying internally. They wake up but without expectation, move but without vision, exist but without fire. But something is happening right now. Your expectation is waking up again. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because deep inside you, something recognizes that this morning is different. You have cried enough, doubted enough, waited enough. Heaven is responding, not to perfection, to persistence, because you kept going when your strength was low. You kept breathing when your heart was tired. You kept standing when everything around you told you to quit. And God saw all of it. Nothing was wasted, not the tears, not the delay, not the loneliness. He was using every piece of it to prepare a door that matches the person you are becoming. And what is coming next will not look like what tried to destroy you. It will look like restoration. There is something dangerous about waking up without awareness. Because when people do not recognize what God is doing, they treat sacred moments casually. And some of you almost missed this morning emotionally. Your body woke up, but your spirit was exhausted. You smiled in front of people while silently carrying battles nobody could see. The pressure, the uncertainty, the disappointment that kept replaying in your mind at night. You asked God questions you never said out loud. Why does it feel like I keep fighting the same battle? Why does favor seem to happen? For everybody except me? Why do doors close when I am trying so hard? But what if those questions were preparing you for a revelation you could not receive before? Because there are truths people only understand after pain removes their illusions. And one of the greatest illusions is this: that God's favor means the absence of struggle. Sometimes favor is the reason the struggle intensified. Because when heaven marks your life for something greater, resistance increases. Not because you are forgotten, because you are dangerous. The enemy does not attack empty people heavily. He attacks potential. He attacks purpose. He attacks people carrying something powerful enough to change generations. And many of you have been misreading the warfare around your life. You thought the pressure meant abandonment. But pressure often reveals value. Nobody breaks into an empty vault. Listen carefully. There are doors God opens for survival. Then there are doors God opens for transformation. Transformation doors require a different version of you. That is why this season has felt uncomfortable. God has been stretching your capacity. The old mentality could not enter the next season. The old habits could not sustain the next level. The old emotional patterns could not survive where God is taking you. And this is where many people run backward. Because growth feels unfamiliar. Humans naturally crave certainty, but faith does not grow in certainty. Faith grows in movement. Abraham did not receive the full map. He received an instruction. And some of you are frustrated because God gave you a direction instead of details. But details can create dependence on logic. God wants dependence on Him. That is why some doors only become visible after obedience, not before. You keep asking for proof while heaven waits for movement. And the painful part is this: fear sounds logical. Fear will tell you to stay safe, stay hidden, stay small. But smallness is expensive. It costs dreams, costs years, it costs identity. Many people are alive physically but buried mentally under fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of starting again, after disappointment. But hear this deeply. You cannot step into a new door while holding the handle of the old one. At some point, release becomes necessary. And release is painful because humans become emotionally attached to what is familiar even when it is hurting them. That relationship, that environment, version of yourself, sometimes the hardest thing to release is not people. It is old identities. The identity that says, I will always struggle. I am unlucky. Nothing good stays. I am too broken. Number. Those were survival statements created during painful seasons. But survival is not your final destination. God did not wake you up today so you could repeat the same cycle forever. There is movement happening, invisible movement. And heaven often moves silently before manifestation becomes visible. That is why mature faith does not panic during silence. Silence does not mean inactivity. A seed underground looks inactive too. But underground seasons are where roots are formed. And roots matter more than appearances, because anything without roots collapses under pressure. That is why God allowed certain delays, not to punish you, to strengthen your foundation. You wanted immediate elevation. God wanted stability, because rapid success without internal maturity destroys people. Many. People ask for open doors while remaining emotionally unprepared for what is behind them. Money exposes character. Influence exposes insecurity. Opportunity exposes discipline. And heaven knew what needed to change inside you before certain doors could safely open. So the waiting season became a classroom. Pain became a teacher. Silence became training. You learned discernment. You learned endurance. You learned how to stand without applause. That matters, because the next season of your life cannot depend on constant validation from people. Some of you were addicted to being chosen by humans. But God had to teach you that divine favor does not require universal approval. People can misunderstand you and still not stop what God decided. People can leave your life and still not cancel your destiny. People can reject you and still accidentally push you toward purpose. Joseph's brothers thought they were ruining him. They were positioning him. And there are moments in life where betrayal becomes transportation. Read that slowly in your spirit. Some betrayals are painful elevators. They move you where comfort never could, because comfort rarely changes people deeply. Pressure does. Pressure reveals what you truly believe. When everything is shaking, what remains inside you? That is the real question. And many people discovered during this season that their confidence was built on fragile things. Money, people, routine, predictability. Then life shook everything. Because God will never allow temporary things to become the foundation of your identity. Temporary things eventually collapse, but spiritual foundations survive storms. This is why some of you are stronger now, even though you suffered. Not because pain is pleasant, but because pain forced you to discover dimensions of strength you never knew existed. The old you would have quit already. The old you would have collapsed emotionally. But look at yourself. You are still here, still breathing, still hoping, still listening. That means something inside you survived the storm. And surviving the storm was part of the miracle. Because not every battle was designed to destroy you. Some battles were designed to reveal you to yourself, to show you that there is more strength in you than fear wanted you to believe, more wisdom in you than insecurity admitted, more purpose in you than your circumstances reflected. And now the door is approaching, not because you earned perfection, because grace decided your story is not over. Hear this carefully. God does not open doors based only on your history. Sometimes He opens them based on your potential, based on who you are becoming, based on what your obedience can unlock in the future. That means your current condition is not the final verdict over your life. This morning was proof. The fact that your eyes open means heaven still has assignments connected to your existence, still has people attached to your voice, still has healing attached to your journey, still has favor attached to your future. And what looked delayed may suddenly accelerate faster than you imagined. Because when God moves, years can change in moments. One conversation, one opportunity, one divine connection, one unexpected breakthrough. And suddenly the season changes. Not gradually, completely. But before the external doors open fully, something greater must happen internally. You must stop seeing yourself as abandoned. Because abandoned people shrink. Chosen people prepare. And whether you realize it or not, this morning heaven was telling you to prepare. Preparation is uncomfortable because it forces you to act before results appear. That is the mystery most people never understand. Noah built before rain. Farmers sow before harvest. Faith moves before evidence. And many people miss new doors because they wait for certainty instead of responding to revelation. But God rarely gives full certainty in advance. Why? Because certainty would remove the need for trust. And trust is the language of relationship. Listen carefully. Some of you have been asking God for signs while ignoring the changes already happening inside you. You are not thinking the same anymore, not tolerating the same anymore, not chasing the same things anymore. That is not accidental. Transformation always begins internally before it appears externally. A tree grows underground before anyone sees fruit. And there are people listening right now who are frustrated because they cannot yet see visible evidence of change. But invisible progress is still progress. The problem is that modern people worship visibility. If they cannot see movement, they assume nothing is happening. But heaven does its greatest work in hidden places. A child forms in darkness. Roots develop in darkness. Diamonds form under pressure in hidden conditions. So why are you insulting the hidden season? Why are you calling yourself forgotten when God may actually be developing you? You wanted quick rescue. God wanted depth, and depth takes time. Anybody can shout when life feels easy. But only transformed people remain steady during uncertainty. That is why storms reveal maturity. A weak foundation collapses under pressure. And some of you thought you were losing everything, but heaven was exposing weak foundations before elevation arrived. Because what God is preparing to place on your life requires stability, not emotional chaos, not constant insecurity, not dependency on everybody's opinion. There are rooms you cannot enter while addicted to approval. There are doors that only open when your identity becomes stronger than your fear of rejection. And this is the battle many people never win. They spend their whole lives asking permission to become who God already called them to be. Imagine that. Living beneath your assignment because you fear human opinions, shrinking your voice, shrinking your dreams, shrinking your potential. Somebody once rejected you, but rejection is not always denial. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Some people left your life because they could not accompany your next season. Some opportunities collapsed because they were too small for where God is taking you. But humans grieve closed doors without realizing those doors were limiting them. And this is where spiritual maturity changes everything. Mature people stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this preparing me for? Because every season contains instruction, even painful seasons, especially painful seasons. Pain strips illusions. Pain exposes what truly matters. Pain reveals who is genuinely with you and who is only attached to convenience. And many of you discovered during this season that some people loved the version of you that needed them. But once you started growing, they became uncomfortable. Because insecure people often resist your transformation. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. So they criticize you, doubt you, misunderstand you. Do not take it personally. People who refuse to grow become threatened by people who do. And there comes a moment where you must stop apologizing for evolving. You cannot remain spiritually asleep just to make others comfortable. You cannot continue shrinking your destiny to fit environments God outgrew in your life years ago. Listen carefully. God did not wake you up this morning to remain trapped in old mental prisons. You are physically free but mentally chained, still replaying old failures, still carrying guilt from years ago, still defining yourself by moments God already forgave. But heaven is not asking you to live in yesterday, and this is the trap of the enemy. To keep your mind so attached to the past that you cannot recognize the doors opening in front of you. Because distracted people miss divine moments. Fear narrows vision. Pain narrows vision. Shame narrows vision. Not just physical healing, mental healing, emotional healing. Because wounded people often sabotage what they prayed for. They push away healthy opportunities because pain trained them to expect disappointment. They mistrust blessings because survival mode taught them that peace never lasts. But survival mode is not supposed to become your permanent identity. You were created for more than constant emotional warfare. And hear this deeply. Healing is not forgetting what happened. Healing is no longer allowing what happened to control your identity. There is power in that. Because many people remain trapped, not by events, but by agreement with those events. A failure happened once, and now they call themselves failures. Someone betrayed them once, and now they believe nobody can be trusted. One door closed, and now they assume every future door will close too. But your experiences are not authorized to define your destiny. Only God has that authority. And heaven has been trying to teach you something critical. Do not build your expectations around your past experiences. Build them around God's ability to create new outcomes. Because if God only worked through perfect conditions, nobody would experience miracles. Miracles exist precisely because human limitations exist. Healing exists because wounds exist. Restoration exists because loss exists. And some of you have spent years mourning things God already planned to replace. Read that slowly. You cried over what ended. But what if what ended was too small for your future? Humans become emotionally attached to seasons God already completed. That is why transition feels painful. Part of you wants familiarity, but another part of you senses destiny calling. And destiny is never comfortable at first. It stretches people, pulls them beyond old identities, forces them into deeper trust. That is why this morning matters. This morning was not random. Heaven was making an announcement, necessarily through visible signs, but through awakening. Something inside you is waking up again. Vision is waking up. Expectation is waking up. Courage is waking up. And the enemy is terrified of awakened people, because awakened people stop settling, stop doubting every step, stop living beneath their assignment. Once a person realizes God still has purpose attached to their existence, hopelessness loses power. That is why darkness fights your mind so aggressively. Because if your perspective changes, your life changes. A transformed mind sees opportunities where fear sees obstacles. A transformed mind sees preparation where weak people see punishment. A transformed mind recognizes that delays do not always mean denial. Sometimes delays are protection. If God had opened certain doors earlier, you would have entered them immature, emotionally unstable, spiritually unprepared, mentally weak. So heaven slowed things down, not to hurt you, to preserve you. And preservation is also love. Many prayers sound good emotionally, but would destroy people spiritually if answered too early. That is why wisdom matters more than impatience. And now, after everything you survived, after the tears, the confusion, the silent battles nobody knew about, you are beginning to understand something powerful. God was never absent. He was building a version of you capable of carrying what is coming next. And what is coming next will require faith greater than fear, because the door opening before you is not small. It is connected to purpose. Purpose is dangerous when a person does not understand it, because people who do not know who they are will trade destiny for comfort. They will abandon calling for approval, trade vision for temporary pleasure, exchange greatness for familiarity. And this is happening to millions every day. They are alive, but disconnected from why they were created. So they move through life exhausted, not because they are doing too much, because they are carrying lives they were never designed to live. Listen carefully. One of the greatest forms of suffering is succeeding at the wrong assignment. Imagine climbing a ladder for years only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. That is why external success without inner alignment still leaves people empty. Money cannot heal missing purpose. Applause cannot heal identity confusion. Attention cannot heal spiritual emptiness. And some of you have spent years trying to fill internal voids with external things. More validation, more distractions, more noise. But noise cannot heal the soul. Only truth can. And truth is uncomfortable before it becomes liberating. Because truth forces confrontation. Confrontation with your excuses. Confrontation with your fear. Confrontation with the version of yourself you became while surviving painful seasons. Many people do not even know themselves anymore. Pain changed them. Disappointment hardened them. Betrayal made them suspicious. So now they protect themselves from everything, including the blessings they prayed for. This is why some people unknowingly resist their own miracles. Because miracles often require vulnerability, to trust again, hope again, try again, believe again after disappointment. That takes courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is movement despite fear. Do you know how many destinies were buried by hesitation? How many dreams died because somebody waited too long for perfect conditions? But perfection is an illusion. There will always be uncertainty, always risk, always reasons to doubt. That is why faith matters. Because faith allows movement before guarantees exist. And heaven responds to movement, not excuses. Listen carefully. God opening doors does not mean you will never feel afraid. It means fear no longer has permission to control your decisions. There is a difference. Some of the most powerful people in history moved while trembling internally, but they moved anyway. Movement changes everything. Because stagnant water decays. Stagnant minds decay too. People who stop growing eventually start shrinking emotionally. That is why hopelessness is so dangerous. Hopeless people stop preparing, stop expecting, stop believing anything can change. And once expectation dies, vision dies with it. But your expectation is returning. You can feel it. Something inside you refuses to completely give up, even after all the disappointment, even after nights where you questioned everything, even after moments where you smiled publicly while silently breaking internally. You are still here. That matters more than you realize, because survival itself was part of the preparation. The enemy wanted exhaustion to finish you, wanted disappointment to convince you that your future had already been decided. But your story is not over, and heaven keeps proving it every morning you wake up. Breath is evidence. Another sunrise is evidence. The fact that your heart still carries desire is evidence. Dead things do not hunger for purpose. Dead things do not feel conviction. The reason you still feel restless is because your spirit recognizes that you were created for more than survival, more than routine, more than fear, more than repeating the same emotional cycles forever. And this is where transformation begins. Not when circumstances suddenly become easy, but when identity changes. Because once identity changes, behavior follows. People who see themselves as victims behave differently from people who see themselves as chosen. Victims wait permanently for rescue. Chosen people prepare for responsibility. And responsibility is heavy. That is why many ask for influence without understanding its cost. Influence attracts warfare. Purpose attracts resistance. Greater calling attracts greater pressure. But pressure is not proof that you are failing. Pressure often means something valuable is being developed. Diamonds understand pressure. Oil understands pressure. And some of the strongest people carry hidden stories of suffering nobody sees. The pressure built them, not comfortably, but powerfully. And many of you are stronger now than you were before the storm. You discern faster now, see differently now, value peace differently now. Pain educated you, not because pain is good, but because God refused to waste it. That is another mystery most people never understand. God wastes nothing, not the betrayal, not the delay, not the closed doors, not even the mistakes. He can use broken pieces to build stronger futures. That is what restoration means. Restoration is not pretending the damage never happened. Restoration is God bringing beauty out of what tried to destroy you. And some of you are about to witness restoration in areas where you expected permanent loss. Not because you deserve perfection, because grace decided your final chapter will not resemble your worst season. But before restoration becomes visible externally, belief must awaken internally. You must stop speaking defeat over your future. Words matter. People underestimate this. But your mouth reveals your internal agreement. If you constantly speak hopelessness, eventually your mind starts accepting limitation as truth. That is why some people remain trapped in environments they could have escaped years earlier. They mentally surrendered before circumstances changed. Never do that. Never allow temporary seasons to become permanent conclusions. This current chapter is not the whole story. One conversation can shift everything. One opportunity can shift everything. One encounter with divine favor can alter generations. Humans underestimate how quickly God can move. Years of delay can collapse in moments. Doors that resisted you for years can suddenly open. People who ignored you can suddenly recognize your value. Situations that looked impossible can suddenly shift direction. Why? Because when heaven decides a season has changed, human resistance cannot permanently stop it. And some of you are entering that kind of shift now. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because your perspective is changing. You're beginning to understand that your identity is not tied to your current struggle. Your struggle is temporary. Your purpose is deeper than this moment. And what God placed inside you cannot die just because circumstances became difficult. Seeds survive underground seasons. Remember that. Buried does not mean dead, not mean forgotten. Delayed does not mean denied. And this morning, when your eyes opened, heaven was signaling something profound. Not only are new doors opening around you, new doors are opening within you. The ability to see differently, think differently, believe differently. Because the greatest prison was never around you. It was the small version of yourself you kept agreeing with. But that version is breaking now, slowly, powerfully, irreversibly. And once a person truly awakens to who Everything changes. Everything changes the moment a person stops identifying with their wounds. That is the turning point. Not when money appears, not when applause arrives, not when circumstances suddenly become easy. The true turning point happens internally. When you finally realize, I am more than what happened to me. That realization terrifies darkness, because wounded people are easier to control. People trapped in shame stay small. People trapped in fear avoid risk. People trapped in insecurity reject opportunities before opportunities reject them. But healed people move differently. They stop begging for permission to exist, stop apologizing for growing, stop shrinking themselves to fit environments that were never assigned to their future. And many of you are entering that shift now. You can feel the tension. Part of you wants to remain familiar. Another part of you knows you cannot return to who you used to be. That tension is real because transformation is not comfortable. Transformation feels like internal stretching. The old identity fights for survival while the new identity struggles to emerge. And during this stage, confusion often increases. Why? Because you are no longer fully connected to your old season, but you have not completely entered the new one either. So you feel suspended between two versions of yourself. One version built from pain, the other built from purpose. And purpose always demands evolution. Listen carefully. You cannot carry a greater assignment with a smaller mindset. That is impossible. New doors require new thinking. This is why heaven sometimes allows discomfort to remain longer than expected. Discomfort exposes limitations. Pressure exposes emotional weakness. Delay exposes impatience. And exposure is necessary before transformation. Because people cannot heal what they refuse to confront. That is why many remain trapped for years. They avoid self-examination, avoid truth, avoid responsibility. It is easier to blame life than confront internal patterns. But mature people ask difficult questions. Why do I keep repeating the same cycle? Why do I sabotage healthy opportunities? Why do I fear success as much as failure? Yes, many people secretly fear success. Not because they hate greatness, because greatness requires responsibility. Responsibility exposes excuses. Once you know who you are, pretending becomes harder. And some of you have been feeling conviction lately, not condemnation. Conviction, there is a difference. Condemnation says, you are hopeless. Conviction says, you were created for more than this. One destroys identity, the other awakens it. And heaven has been awakening you through pain, through silence, through unexpected seasons you did not understand at first. Because there are truths comfort can never teach. Comfort rarely produces depth. People discover deeper dimensions of themselves during storms. That is why your hardest seasons often revealed your strongest qualities. You learned endurance, discernment, patience. You learned how to survive moments that once would have destroyed you emotionally. Look at yourself carefully. The version of you from years ago could not have handled what you survived recently. But now, you are still standing, wounded perhaps, tired perhaps, but still standing. And survival changed you. Not just externally. Internally, you think differently now. You value peace differently now. You recognize fake connections. Faster now. Pain sharpened your discernment. And discernment is protection. Because not every open door is from God. Some doors distract. Some doors delay. Some doors slowly destroy identity. That is why wisdom matters more than excitement. A person desperate for validation will walk through dangerous doors simply because they are open. But mature people learn to ask deeper questions. Does this align with who I am becoming? Will this strengthen my purpose or weaken it? Will this bring peace or confusion? Those questions matter because destiny is shaped by decisions. And many people underestimate how small decisions create massive outcomes over time. One compromise, one unhealthy attachment, one season of ignoring conviction. Small choices eventually become life directions. That is why discipline matters. Not as punishment, as protection. Discipline protects future doors. And many people misunderstand favor because they think favor removes responsibility. Favor increases responsibility. When heaven opens larger doors, greater stewardship becomes necessary. Greater wisdom, greater maturity, greater emotional control. Because opportunities without discipline eventually become burdens. That is why God has been strengthening you internally before accelerating things externally. Imagine receiving everything you prayed for while remaining emotionally unstable. You would sabotage it. So heaven slowed certain things down until your spirit became stronger than your impulses. And now something is shifting. The same situations that once broke your confidence no longer control you the same way. The same opinions that once crushed you now lose power faster. Why? Because identity is strengthening. And strong identity changes how people respond to life. When identity is weak, rejection feels fatal. When identity is strong, rejection becomes information. When identity is weak, delay feels like destruction. When identity is strong, delay becomes preparation. Perspective changes everything. Two people can experience the same storm and emerge completely different. One becomes bitter. The other becomes wiser. One surrenders internally. The other discovers resilience. And resilience is being built inside you now. Not fake positivity, not denial, real resilience. The kind created when someone survives nights nobody else understands. The kind created when someone keeps believing while circumstances contradict the promise. That kind of faith changes people permanently. And this is where many breakthroughs begin. Not externally first, internally first. Because once your internal agreement changes, your life starts moving differently. People who truly believe doors can open behave differently from people who expect failure. Expectation affects movement. Movement affects opportunities. Opportunities affect outcomes. That is why hopelessness is so destructive. Hopeless people stop moving. But heaven did not wake you up this morning to remain frozen in fear. You are alive for a reason, not merely to exist, not merely to repeat routines until death. There is assignment attached to your breath, people connected to your obedience, healing connected to your journey, impact connected to your voice. And the enemy knows this. That is why your mind has been attacked so intensely. Because if you ever fully realize your value, you will stop living beneath your calling. You will stop negotiating with fear. Stop settling for emotional prisons. Accepting survival as your final identity. And hear this carefully. You are not merely recovering. You are becoming. There is a difference. Recovery focuses only on returning to normal. But becoming creates transformation beyond what existed before. And some of you are about to become stronger than the version of yourself that existed before the pain. Wiser, deeper, more discerning. Because God does not simply restore people. He rebuilds them with greater strength. That is why this new season will not look exactly like the old one you lost. It will carry greater wisdom, greater clarity, greater alignment. And the doors opening now are not random opportunities. They are connected to the person you are becoming. Not the person fear tried to convince you you were. Fear has a voice, a quiet voice, a repetitive voice. It whispers the same limitations until people mistake them for truth. You will always struggle. Nothing ever changes for you. And if those thoughts repeat long enough, they begin shaping identity. That is why mental battles are so dangerous. Because the greatest captivity is invisible. A person can walk freely outside while remaining imprisoned internally, trapped by old memories, old labels, old disappointments. And many people do not realize they are living beneath their true potential because they normalized emotional survival. They adapted to pain instead of healing from it. They adapted to fear instead of confronting it. They adapted to disappointment until low expectations became their comfort zone. But low expectations are not humility. Sometimes they are wounded thinking. Listen carefully. You dishonor possibility when you constantly expect destruction. You were not created to live every day anticipating failure. And yes, life wounds people. Yes, betrayal changes people. Yes, disappointment leaves scars. But scars are not supposed to become permanent definitions. A scar means you survived. It is evidence that pain did not finish you. And survival carries responsibility. Because once you survive certain battles, you owe yourself a new level of courage. You cannot keep thinking like the person who almost gave up years ago. That version of you was fighting to survive. But survival is no longer the assignment. Growth is. Expansion is. Alignment is. And growth requires difficult decisions, sometimes lowly decisions. Because not everyone will understand the direction God is leading you. Some people only feel comfortable with the version of you they could control. The moment you begin evolving, they become uncomfortable. Not because you change negatively, because your growth exposes their resistance to change. Do not let that stop you. There are seasons where obedience to God will make you misunderstood by people. That is normal. Noah looked foolish before rain came. Vision often appears irrational to people who cannot see what you see. And this is why discernment matters. Because everybody around you may not recognize what heaven is doing in your life. Some people will call your transition confusion. Some will call your faith unrealistic. Some will mock the very thing that later becomes your testimony. But hear this deeply. Never allow temporary opinions to override eternal purpose. People speak from their level of understanding, and limited people often project limitations onto others. That is why protecting your mind matters. Not every voice deserves access to your spirit. Some voices weaken courage. Some voices feed insecurity. Some voices constantly remind you of your past while God is trying to move you into your future. Be careful what you repeatedly listen to, because repeated words become internal beliefs, and internal beliefs eventually shape behavior. This is why some people sabotage themselves unconsciously. Their external actions simply reflect internal agreements. A person who secretly believes they are unworthy will eventually reject healthy opportunities. A person who secretly believes failure is inevitable will hesitate during moments requiring boldness. And hesitation has stolen many destinies, not because doors never opened, because fear convinced people not to walk through them. But something is changing inside you now. Your fear is losing authority, not instantly, but steadily. Because truth is replacing old agreements. You are beginning to realize that your past does not own your future. Your mistakes do not cancel purpose. Your delays do not cancel destiny. And your wounds do not cancel worth. That realization changes everything. Because people move differently once they understand their value. They stop begging to be chosen by environments that cannot honor their calling. Stop settling for emotional crumbs. Stop remaining loyal to places that continuously diminish their spirit. You cannot thrive in environments committed to your shrinking. Read that slowly. Some places only tolerate the weak version of you. The healed version threatens them. The confident version threatens them. The awakened version threatens them. That is why growth often creates separation. Not because you became arrogant. Because alignment changed. And alignment matters more than comfort. Many people stay trapped because they choose familiarity over purpose. They know certain environments are draining them. No certain relationships are limiting them. No certain habits are destroying momentum, but fear keeps them attached. Fear of loneliness, fear of change, fear of the unknown. Yet the unknown is often where miracles wait. Nobody discovers new territory while refusing to leave old ground. And some of you are standing at that exact moment now, a threshold moment. The old season is ending emotionally before it ends physically. You can feel it. Things that once satisfied you no longer satisfy you. Conversations that once entertained you now feel empty. Certain patterns now exhaust your spirit. Why? Your soul recognizes transition before your circumstances fully reflect it. And transition is sacred, painful sometimes, confusing sometimes, but necessary. Because every new level of purpose demands separation from old limitations. You cannot carry new wine in old containers. And heaven has been replacing old containers inside you. Old beliefs, old fears, old emotional patterns. Not comfortably, but intentionally. Because what is approaching your life requires greater capacity. And capacity is built through stretching. Think about it. Muscles grow through resistance. Character grows through resistance too. That is why your struggles were not meaningless. The pressure was building strength you could not develop any other way. Patience, wisdom, discernment, endurance. These qualities are expensive. They are formed through process. And process humbles people. Process removes arrogance, removes illusions, removes dependency on superficial things, until finally a person realizes, God was not destroying me, He was developing me. That revelation changes how you interpret your history. Suddenly the delay looks different. The closed doors look different. The painful endings look different. Because now you understand that some endings were mercy. If certain people had stayed, they would have delayed your healing. If certain doors had opened earlier, they would have destroyed your focus. If certain prayers had been answered immediately, you would have entered places emotionally unprepared. So heaven protected you through delay. And protection rarely feels pleasant in the moment. But later, wisdom recognizes it. One day you will look back and thank God for doors you cried over. You will understand why certain relationships ended, why certain plans collapsed, Why certain seasons forced you into isolation. Because isolation taught you how to hear clearly again, away from noise, away from pressure, away from constant distraction. And clarity is priceless. A clear mind recognizes opportunity faster. A clear spirit discerns direction faster. A clear identity resists manipulation faster. That is why healing matters so deeply. Not merely for comfort, for alignment. Because healed people stop chasing things that damage them. And alignment is happening in your life right now. Slowly perhaps, but undeniably. The person waking up today is not the same person who entered the last season. You have suffered, learned, evolved. And now heaven is opening doors that match your growth. Doors connected to favor, healing, restoration, purpose. Not because you became perfect. Preparation changes how a person walks. The fearful version hesitates constantly. The healed version moves with quiet confidence, not arrogance. Alignment, there is a difference. Arrogance depends on ego. Alignment depends on revelation. And revelation changes people permanently. Once you truly understand that God did not wake you up by accident, ordinary thinking becomes impossible. You stop seeing yourself as random. Stop seeing your life as meaningless suffering. Stop interpreting every delay as rejection. Because now you understand something deeper. If heaven preserved you, purpose still exists. And purpose changes everything. Purpose gives pain context, gives struggle meaning, gives endurance value. Without purpose, suffering feels pointless. But once purpose awakens, even painful seasons begin revealing hidden lessons. And many of you are finally beginning to understand your journey differently. The betrayal taught discernment. The delay taught patience. The loneliness taught dependence on God instead of constant human validation. Nothing was wasted. Not even the nights you cried silently while pretending to be strong during the day. God saw all of it. Every hidden battle, every disappointed prayer, every moment you almost surrendered internally. He saw the exhaustion nobody understood. And still, He kept waking you up. Why? Because your assignment survived the attack. Read that slowly. The attack was real, the pain was real, the confusion was real, but your assignment survived. That means something greater than your struggle has been protecting your life. And protection does not always feel gentle. Sometimes protection looks like interruption. Sometimes it looks like separation. Sometimes it looks like doors closing while you beg for them to remain open. But heaven sees further than emotion. Humans see moments. God sees consequences. That is why trusting Him sometimes feels uncomfortable, because He will deny certain desires to preserve deeper destiny. And maturity is learning not to worship temporary emotions above eternal wisdom. This is where many people fail. They allow feelings to become authority. If they feel afraid, they stop moving. If they feel rejected, they stop believing. If they feel uncertain, they abandon vision. But feelings change constantly. Truth does not. And the truth is this: your future has not been canceled. Your value has not decreased because life became difficult. Your destiny did not disappear because you experienced delay. You are still here, still breathing, still learning, still becoming. That matters because there are people who physically survived life while spiritually quitting years ago. They stopped expecting joy, stopped expecting healing, stopped expecting open doors. They learned how to exist without hope. But hopelessness is not wisdom. Emotional exhaustion. And heaven has been restoring your hope little by little. Through small signs, small confirmations, small moments where something inside you whispered, "Do not give up yet." That whisper mattered. Because sometimes one whisper from God carries enough strength to keep a person alive emotionally. And many of you are standing at the edge of a breakthrough season now. Not because everything around you already changed, because you changed. Your thinking changed. Changed. Your discernment changed. You no longer chase everything that shines. No longer force doors God closed. No longer beg to stay where peace disappeared. That is growth. And growth creates readiness. Listen carefully. Some people pray for favor without understanding what favor actually does. Favor does not merely give opportunities. Favor reveals environments. Some people will celebrate your growth. Others will resent it. Some will recognize your value. Others will try to diminish it. Once identity becomes secure, external reactions lose power. Because secure people no longer depend on public approval to obey divine direction. And that freedom changes everything. Imagine living without constantly needing everyone to understand you. Imagine obeying purpose even when applause is absent. Imagine waking up every morning aware that your existence carries meaning beyond temporary circumstances. That awareness creates strength, real strength, not loud strength. Steady strength. Kind storms cannot easily destroy, and storms will still come. Let us speak truthfully. Open doors do not remove all battles. Healing does not remove every challenge. Favor does not eliminate warfare, but transfer.